VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are about a week and a half from mandatory minicamp when we'll kind of watch to see if Justin Jefferson's going to show up. Because if he doesn't, that would indicate we might have a true blue holdout on our hands. We hope that's not the case. But we're going to get into a lot of Viking stuff tonight. We're here with Sean Kenner, I think on his third or fourth time on the show. How are you doing this weekend, sir?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. It's been rough this afternoon with my basketball fandom, but it's all right. It's okay. Football season's right around the corner, so I'm ready, man. I'm feeling all right.
I tweeted this yesterday. We are closer to the start of the regular season than we are to the end of the Super Bowl in February. So that's how palpable it is for first-time viewers of the Sean Kenner experience. He's a Pacers fan, so naturally that's why he's a little let down an hour after the Game 3 loss. But we're going to jump into this Viking stuff. The last time we talked to you, my man, we were previewing what the schedule could be or what we wanted to see. Now we have a tangible schedule in our fingertips. Tell me about three things that jumped off the page for you that you were like, oh, okay, some schedule takeaways for the group.
The first thing that kind of jumped out to me, and it's not a particular game, it's just the disappointment in the opportunity in this schedule. You had an opportunity to line up the Falcons and the Vikings in prime time as a home opener. You had the perfect opportunity to do so. I don't see why you would put it that late in the season. I don't like it. Some people like it because they feel like there's going to be some playoff implications between the Vikings and Falcons. I don't think so. But I just hated that. I hated the LA game being on Thursday night. And I think that's more of a personal kind of bias to me because it's LA. My team's coming out to my area. I want it to be a weekend. I don't want it to be a Thursday night. It's kind of lame. But if I want to look at the positives, I like the back end of the schedule. Actually, the front end's kind of rough the first few games. You start out with the Giants, which I believe should be a win, but then you got the 49ers, the Texans, and the Packers, and then you go to London to play the Jets. Those are four really, really hard games. Now, we've beaten the 49ers. I think they haven't beaten us in Minnesota in like 25 years or something like that, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it. So,
my goodness.
So yeah, no, it's been a while. It's actually a topic of conversation last season when we played them on Monday night and we ended up beating them. So, but those first 4 out of 5 games are really rough. But again, it's more personal bias. I hate the Rams game on Thursday night. And I just hate the fact that's the one that sticks out. The Falcons-Vikings game being so late in the season, I feel like it takes away from the whole storyline of Kirk Cousins coming back to Minnesota. I don't think Michael Penix will be starting for them at that time. I think Kirk's going to be the quarterback. But it takes away from the spiciness of, let's jump right into this Kirk Cousins versus the Vikings thing. Even if it wasn't on prime time, which it's not. Why not put it the first 1 or 2 weeks of the season? It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know how the stat is valid, but the 49ers haven't beaten the Vikings in the Twin Cities since 1992. 7 straight losses against the Vikings, which feels like a really weird thing. Not that the Niners have been absolutely badass since Steve Young and Montana era ended, but you'd think that they would have scored a win against the Vikings. They're going to try. Let's see, early in September. Yeah, the thing about the first part of the schedule is 6 of the first 8 games are against playoff teams from last year, and one of the teams that isn't a playoff team has Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback in a home game in London. So yeah, it's not a good start to the schedule unless tons of injuries arise for the other team. So we're either going to figure out that Sam Darnold has really got the special sauce because, hey, they've got a 4-3 record coming out of the bye or something like that, or they're going to be like 2 and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh God. Then we start talking about the McCarthy era. So yeah, the schedule. And then after you get over that hump, if you assume the Vikings are decent, then it does soften up, even though the back-to-back-to-back road games are against teams right now that kind of look like, oh, well, that's somewhat winnable. Jaguars, what is it? Titans and one other.
Yeah, Jaguars, Titans, and Bears on Monday night.
Yeah, okay. So that
and then Cardinals after that.
Yeah, then you come home for good home cooking, which is where some, like Ben Lever, have labeled the start of the McCarthy era, if we have it at all in 2024. All right, well, thank you for those schedule takeaways. Brev, what do you got for Sean?
Yeah, I wanted 2 quick things before I get to my question. One, I have to apologize to Sean because we had him on the Social Network like I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago. I don't. Time is crazy. Um, I told him that WrestleMania was going to be in Minneapolis next year because it looked like it was all but decided. It's not. It's in
Cursed it.
Vegas, so
You
it's
cursed
close.
it.
It's closer to you, I guess. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, that was a lie. I made
You get
assumptions.
SummerSlam though, right?
Yeah, 2 nights in 2026. That might work out better. I don't know. So I wanted to apologize for that. Two, I also hate the LA game for a way less valid reason than you. I hate because I'm on the East Coast. I hate when it's night here and the game is being played in like daylight. I hate that. It sucks. It doesn't feel like prime time.
Yeah.
But yeah, my question is related to the schedule. Is there, and this is going off what we know on May 25th, which so we don't know anything, but is
Yeah.
there a part of the schedule or like a certain game or window of games where you look and you say, "Hey, McCarthy time." Like is there do you see a good spot for McCarthy to come in?
Um, I mean, the obvious one is what Dustin said earlier, where we kind of rattle off after those 3 road games,
Yeah.
and then you come back home against the Cardinals and then the Falcons. I think he should be in the mix by that Falcons game because if I'm being honest, my expectations aren't extremely high this season, and I feel like we're playing with house money at the same
Mhm.
time. So where hey, if we have a good season, Sam Darnold goes out there and balls out, great. If JJ McCarthy ends up making the start and ends up balling out, great. If we suck, then good thing we kept our first round pick and didn't, waste it on going up for Drake May. So I think the perfect time for JJ McCarthy to come in would be that Bears game on Monday night. And I think it adds to that Monday night game as well, to where it's Caleb Williams versus JJ McCarthy. It's JJ McCarthy's first start. It's in prime time. And again, I'm not comparing the whole Kirk Cousins, JJ McCarthy thing because that's going to be a comparison for a long, long time. But it kind of throws your new rookie franchise quarterback into the Lions den of what we've been struggling with for so long. And it not just Kirk Cousins, but just the Minnesota Vikings in general with our Monday night struggle. So it throws him right into the mix of that to see what he's made of. So Bears, Cardinals, and then Falcons against Kirk Cousins. I think those are that Bears game is going to be the game that he starts, I believe.
That was one of the main reasons I was okay with the Atlanta game being later in the year, is
Yeah.
if McCarthy has a higher chance of starting at that time. But could you imagine McCarthy's first career game against Atlanta and Kirk Cousins? That'd be kind of sick.
That would be
That would be the storyline would be there for sure.
Yeah. I don't know
It
how
would be
well
a
it
big
would end, but I would be really excited for the couple days leading up to it. So that's worth it for me.
I mean, if we're lucky, Sam Darnold has an MVP caliber season and we just clinch a first round bye and JJ McCarthy gets, a throwaway game against the Lions at the end of the season. That'd be nice.
Crazier things have happened. The
Yeah.
Detroit Lions just won the division, so like anything
Yeah.
could happen.
Hell has frozen over.
Yep.
I I no matter what, I would rather JJ McCarthy start week 1 because I don't really give a damn if they have a losing season. I'd rather him start learning now. That's if I was running the team, but I fully expect one of my bold predictions that I published this weekend. And I don't know how bold it is, but I think by the time we get to July, it's not even going to be a talking point whether or not McCarthy is going to start week 1. I think there's too many clues from the coaching staff and Kwesi Mensa that Darnold is going to start, and we'll watch on in training camp preseason to see how McCarthy progresses. But that's one of my things right now. The last couple of weeks since the draft, we've banged the drum heavy on Darnold or McCarthy. But I
Mhm.
think by the time we get there, that they don't want to throw McCarthy into the fire. I think that it'll just be Darnold as the QB1 no matter
You
what.
almost said McDarnold, and that was really funny.
McDarnold, yeah. There we go. If they play hopscotch back and forth, the QB1 job for whatever
Yeah.
reason,
Hey.
I'm
Nope.
christening that. All right, Sean. So if you polled hardcore Vikings fans about roster deficiencies at the moment, they would probably say defensive tackle, interior offensive line, and then
Yeah.
maybe WR3 because they're going to have like a 3-way camp battle.
Yeah.
Are you worried about any of those, or based on the speech you just gave about not really considering this a playoff contender year, are those kind of nothing burgers to you, or do those keep you up at night?
No, definitely. And I've been saying this before the draft, before free agency. The interior defensive line needs help. We need some big guys. And so I love Harrison Phillips. I think he's a baller, but we need some meat on the inside. We need somebody that can rush the passer. And that should be our number one priority coming up next offseason, whether it's free agency, whether it's through the draft. That should be the position that you're looking at to draft. Like defensive tackle is a must. We look around the league at the top teams that do have success. The majority of them have a very strong interior defensive line. So you got to go out there and grab that. Yes, we have great, pass rushers. We went out there and drafted Dallas Turner, Greenard. We got Van Ginkel. We picked up guys to kind of supplement what we lost in Daniil Hunter, but we still need somebody on the inside. So that's a big one for me. That's the one I've been kind of stressing on. Wide receiver 3, not so much. I like Powell in that spot. Speedster. He did some really good things for us last season. And then obviously you have the top 2 in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So I'm not necessarily panicking about the wide receiver 3 position. Would it be nice to bring in another viable option in the wide receiver room? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never been a Michael Thomas fan, but him as a number 4 wide receiver, like, just throw slants to him all day as a number 4. Like, it'd be great.
Hey, we'd actually throw some slants. Sweet.
Yeah. We don't throw those very much. So I mean, wide receiver 3 isn't a big need for me necessarily. What was the interior offensive line? You can never have too many offensive linemen or too many talented offensive linemen. That's one position group that you want to be deep at, right along there with pass rusher. You want guys that can come in when guys go down, like we see every single season, that can play multiple positions, and that's very strong. So, yeah, obviously interior offensive line, that's always a need, but interior defensive line is number 1 in my book. You got to address that next off season.
Here's why I like that one. So I don't like the situation as is. I love Harrison Phillips, but then the guy next to him, it's kind of like, oh, who cares who plays there? That's kind of how it seems like they feel.
Yeah.
However, when we get to the offseason next year, and if they only have a 7-10, 6-11 record or something like that, because the draft capital piggy bank is diminished, I think most of us are already looking ahead that, trading down is going to be a big talker to get some of that draft capital back. And it will probably work out wonderfully that you want to target the best defensive tackle in the draft while still trading down. So let's say the Vikings pick 6th or 7th and somebody wants to go get their quarterback. The Vikings can price gouge that to an extent. And then I think there's a guy from Michigan who's highly touted for next year. But I'm going to guess that if you trade back on draft night, you can reclaim a lot of your draft capital piggy bank and then still get your position of need. So not that it's a good position of need to have, but the way the Vikings have set it up, I think we can feel decent about that being the outlook next offseason.
Yeah. And what was interesting to me is that I felt like it was trying to be addressed in free agency. There was, talks out that we were really pushing for Christian Wilkins, and that there was a chance that he was going to sign with us, but the Raiders just offered him just some ridiculous money that he obviously wasn't going to turn down. But we didn't address it in the draft at all. That's what kind of surprised me. If you're going after a top free agent defensive tackle, I mean, and you don't get him, you would think that you would kind of try to address that in the draft, and we haven't. And we haven't even addressed it late in free agency. We haven't picked anybody else up. So another position in need that may be, more urgent at that time of next year's draft is the cornerback position as well. Because a lot coming up this 2024 season, it's more of, okay, what is Andrew Booth? Byron Murphy may not be around after this season. What is Caleb Evans made of? So we have a lot of question marks in that cornerback room to where, what are we going to do? And as well, it looks like we got the replacement for Harrison Smith in Josh Metellus and or Cam Bynum. But with how Brian Flores likes to run his defenses, he's going to probably want to get another safety unless he trusts Theo Jackson and Jay Ward. So a lot can change until next year's draft, but defensive tackle is definitely top of the list.
It's almost like that Christian Wilkins thing fell through and they looked around and said, well, we can't afford 4 years, 110 million, but what we can do is sign the shit out of edge rushers. So let's go do that, and then we'll draft Dallas Turner. Does that make you happy? That's where I think like they had like a happy, even though they're not the same position, it feels like Flores is like, all right, yeah, I can make this work. It's worth noting too when we get to free agency next year, defensive tackle. It's not like it was this year. If you go pull up the names, you're like, oh, we had a time to strike while the iron was hot. There were so many guys, even after Eric Armstead was released, it was like they got to end up with one. There's like 10 that you would like on your defensive line, but no cigar. All right, let's go with a few more for Sean, Kenner, Brevin. What do you got?
Yeah, and I wanted to say on defensive tackle and interior line, like analytics and data and all that is cool, but I actually officially on VikesNow want to propose to NFL front offices, specifically the Vikings, to conduct smell tests on defensive tackle and interior O linemen, because I want them to smell weird. Like I want them to smell sweat. I want them to be big, sweaty. I want them to be out of breath after walking up the stairs, which you would think would be a problem in the fourth quarter, but I don't care. Like, as long as you can block, like go ahead. So I just wanted to bring that up if Quasey's watching. I'll text
Part of
him
the
about
scouting
it.
process.
Right. Yeah.
Put
but I
Matt
wanted-
Daniels on the duty.
Yeah.
Likes to get weird with the dudes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of smelling guys, which it has nothing to
Whoa.
my question has nothing to do with smelling guys, but maybe I just like the thought. I don't know.
Oh man.
So with the new kickoff rules going to special teams, you would think, I mean, I would assume Kene Nwangwu's kind of cemented into kick returner one. If I'm not mistaken, you need two kick returners back there now. So who would be, and I mean, it can be a free agent, anybody on the roster, but who would you put at the second kick returner spot?
I think it's probably gonna be Powell. I think
That's
that's
kind of
gonna
what I
be
thought
the
too.
speedster. It just makes the most sense as well. And I'd be comfortable with both those guys back there. But Kane is definitely should be the primary guy. He should be the guy that's receiving the majority of those kicks. But that new kickoff rule is going to be interesting. I watched it when they had it in the XFL, which for some reason the UFL, they don't do it now. They went back to the old kickoff rule, which it's like, guys, you created it. Like take pride in this. The NFL adopted it. Like this was your thing. So but no, it's going to be interesting. I think there was only one kickoff return that was returned for a touchdown when they were doing that kickoff formation. But obviously, the talent level is far higher in the NFL when it comes to guys like that. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to get a few returns this year, but I think it's going to affect more so better field position. I think you're going to get better field position with how the kickoff setup is now. So instead of taking it at the 20-25 yard line, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more possession start at the 30-35 yard line.
Yeah, and I haven't even like I've glanced at the new rules. I just know there's two kick returners. If you kick to a certain part of the field, you have to return it. But like I'm really stupid, so I really need somebody to like sit down and explain that. I'm gonna have to watch like an hour-long YouTube tutorial and half speed to understand it. But it's weird because like I don't know if it increases the value of having a good kick returner or decreases it. Just because like, well, now you can have two back there, and like you have to return if it goes here, but it's a touchback if you kick. Like I don't know. I think and Powell seems to be that guy. I think it's him or whoever ends up being wide receiver 4. Yeah, I think Powell. I do think the Vikings bring in a receiver at least to compete for 3 before we get to the season. That or like I don't know if you want to put Ty Chandler in that situation if he's going to be a running back too, but I don't
You have
know.
the speed for it.
Yeah,
For sure, yeah.
I could see that. I could see Ty Chandler. I think it's between Ty Chandler and Powell. I pulled up the rules here just to kind of specify on them. So a minimum of 9 members of the receiving team will line up between their own 30 and 35 yard lines. 5 to 10 yards in front of the 10 members of the kicking team. The receiving team can have 0, 1, or 2 players inside their own 30-yard line to receive. So it may still only be one. I think it's just to the discretion of the special teams coach. So it might just be, Kane back there. But I wouldn't mind seeing Powell or Todd Chandler back there as 2 guys. Play begins when the ball is either caught, hits the ground in the landing zone inside the 20-yard line before the goal line, or is returned from the end zone. That's when players can begin moving. So you can return from the end zone, but the ball has to land inside the 20-yard line. The play begins when the ball is either caught, hits the ground in the landing zone, which is inside the 20-yard line. Which is interesting. Any kick that hits the landing zone must be returned. Okay, so there is no fair catch thing. So if it's inside the 20, they have to return it. Any kick that bounces from the landing zone into the end zone must be returned or kneeled for a touchback with possession going out to the 20-yard line. If the kick doesn't reach the landing zone, the receiving team gets possession at its 40-yard line. If the ball enters the end zone in the air, the receiving team can return it or kneel it for possession at the 30-yard line. If the ball is kicked out of bounds, the receiving team gets it at the 40-yard line. There is no fair catches. Onside kicks are only permitted in the fourth quarter and must be declared to officials.
Onside kicks are only permitted in the fourth?
Only permitted in the fourth.
Yeah, and there's still the lame version of them too. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think it feels like it's going to be one of those things like when September 8th, we're getting all ramped up for the game. And then we sit down on the couch. We're like, oh, shit, we got the new kickoff rule. We forgot about that, even though we know about it. I think a lot of us are going to have to see it to figure out what the hell it is, aside from watching the now retired XFL footage. All right, the next one I have for you, Sean, I think we got time for 2 more. This one's a little weird.
2 more.
Yeah, this one's a little weird. So follow me. I can't remember if I said this the last time you were a guest, but we talked about the winds of change with the Vikings, McCarthy, and now Dallas Turner. And my goal as somebody who is a fan foremost and then who also writes about this team is I want to get to the spot where if we're going on the road to play the 49ers or where we've got a Monday night game against the Eagles, I don't want to just pencil that in as a loss because that's what I do right now, even with Kirk, before Kirk. That is my litmus test to say, all right, this new era is working. This quarterback is it. What is your personal test that you're like, all right, McCarthy's the real deal. It's good that Cousins is gone. And this can be for 2026 or whatever. When will you know that the McCarthy Vikings are the real deal?
That's a good one. You might have stole my answer, but I'm going to come up with a different one. Because that's a big one. Obviously, like I said, a few minutes ago, is the whole primetime thing's not just Kirk Cousins. That's a Vikings thing.
Yeah, it is.
So Kirk Cousins didn't make it any better.
Nope.
But it's always been a thing with the Vikings. We've always struggled in primetime for some reason. So outside of that, I think it would be the blowing out a team.
Yeah.
We haven't done that in a long time.
2019
against the Chargers, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which
the
is
Fadia Dembo touchdown game.
Yeah, the road home playoff game or the road home game.
Yep.
So we haven't blown out a team in a very long time to where it was necessarily the offense lighting it up. That wasn't a game where the offense lit it up and just, was pedaled to the floor. That was the defense. We got a defensive touchdown. I believe we got a couple turnovers that put the offense in great position to score. So we haven't had a blowout in a long time. We haven't scored 40 points. When's the last time we scored 40 points?
We'll have to pull that up.
It's
been a long time since we put up 40 plus points. So I think that would be my kind of recognition of the shift in, this franchise and this team is if we see this team put up 40 points and blow a team out. And again, Brev said, it's May 25th right now. This is a long, long ways from the beginning of the season. But if I am going to make a bold prediction, I think that happens this year one time, whether it be with Sam Darnold or whether it be with JJ McCarthy. I think our defense is going to be aggressive enough or we're going to have one of those games where we're just killing them. We're just shutting them down. And I believe with this offense and this firepower and to be honest, with Sam Darnold and things that he is capable of doing, it may not be very consistently, but I feel like he's capable of putting a few games together where he's putting up big points. So my bold prediction going into the season, I know that wasn't a question, that's kind of out of the blue, would be that we actually have a game where we put up 40 plus points and we blow a team out.
Yeah, it's not too much to ask. I just pulled it up. The last time they scored 40 or more was 2 months before that Chargers game. It was 42-30 win over the Lions at US Bank Stadium in October. And during the Cousins era, they only put up 40 or more twice. The first time was against the Dolphins at US Bank Stadium. So yeah,
that was
that's
the Dalvin game too.
Yeah, that was such a great answer on the fly, coming up with, actually scoring points, just throwing him onto the to the scoreboard. That's what was so sweet. You remember the game where Cousins got hurt against the Packers when Addison caught that touchdown and they went up 24-3 or whatever it was?
Yep.
I swear to God, that was the first time I'd ever felt in my stomach in like 5-6 years, like we are beating the shit out of somebody.
Yep.
Like that was the first time I can remember going, holy crap, they're really good. There was a Thursday night game against the Steelers in 2021 where they looked really damn good in the first half, but the Steelers were mid at the time. And then the Packers, that one was so special.
We almost gave that game up against the Steelers.
Oh God. Too. Yeah, I know. Yeah. That came down to like a 4th and goal or something.
Yeah. Harrison Smith breakup in the end zone. Yep.
So that game when Addison caught the touchdown, right, like 45 minutes before Kurt got hurt, that was the last time that I can remember thinking, wow, we're beating somebody handily. And it just so happened to be at Lambeau Field against the most hated rival at a spot where the season could have fundamentally turned around. That's why the Cousins injury was so brutal. But that is my rant. All right, Brevin, what's one more for Sean?
Yep. And I want it to be known that the Vikings have not scored 40 points since, like, just thinking pre-COVID. Like, there's been a worldwide epidemic between us scoring 40 points or blowing somebody out. I used to always tell Lions fans before they finally won a playoff game this year, there's been as many presidential assassinations as they've had playoff wins in the last 60 years, but now I can't do that anymore. So it kind of has the same vibe as that. But I actually wrote an article for Purple PTSD explaining why JJ McCarthy doesn't need to be Kirk Cousins for the Vikings to succeed. And by that, mostly I meant because people look, and it's the natural thing to do, so I get it, like, oh, well, Kirk Cousins always put up 30-plus touchdowns and 8 or 9 picks, so, like, and 4,500 yards. So how could J.J. McCarthy do that in the next 3 years? It's not that simple, of course, as we all know, because we use our brains, but why do you think J.J. McCarthy doesn't need to be Kirk Cousins?
You can kind of compare it to, and I'm not comparing JJ McCarthy to LeBron James, so don't hold me to it. But you look at a guy like LeBron James, he may not put up the best numbers as far as scoring wise, but he usually makes the right play. So JJ McCarthy's just got to make the right play. We don't need you to go out there and throw for over 400 yards every game, 350 yards every game. Make the right play, and that may be with your feet at times. You know, you may not have to chuck it downfield. Just do the right thing. So I think that's all JJ McCarthy needs to focus on when he does get his opportunity. He doesn't seem like the type that's gonna burden that kind of comparison on his shoulders to Kirk Cousins. And I mean, the fan base is gonna compare them, but I think they're gonna compare them more on the wins, losses, and not necessarily the gameplay. Because I don't know where some people got comparisons of Kirk Cousins and JJ McCarthy. I've heard that here and there in like national media to where he's like, he's just like Kirk Cousins. And no, he's not. He's not like Kirk Cousins at all. So just make the right play is what JJ needs to do. And I think that's what's going to separate him not only from Kirk Cousins, but from the other quarterbacks in this draft class and from a lot of the other quarterbacks in this league, to where he's not going to put up crazy numbers, but he's going to be extremely efficient, and he's going to make plays with his legs. So you don't have to be the biggest number getter. Go out there and just make the right play. And I think that's where he sells.
Yeah, and the way I look at it too, like again, I'm really not trying to just like drive by Kirk Cousins just because he's the former quarterback. He's the ex we have to talk
Yeah.
badly about just because we just broke up. But like, it could be so much worse than having to worry about comparing your quarterback to Kirk Cousins. Like the
Yeah.
Patriots have to worry about comparing their quarterback to Tom Brady, like Drake May and Tom
Mhm.
Brady. So like it could be worse. I think we'll be fine with JJ McCarthy. I really do.
And on top of the fact that Cousins is pretty damn good,
Yes.
Yeah.
in case we missed that. I just pulled it up for curious minds. In the last 5 seasons, so the start of 2019, the Vikings have one game where they scored over 40 points. For perspective, the Dallas Cowboys, who aren't necessarily a gangbusters franchise, they have 18. 18
Jesus.
games, and the Vikings have one. So
Jesus.
on that note, Sean, we'll probably hit you up like around June 22nd or so to come back on.
Oh yeah.
By that time, we'll have mandatory minicamp in the books and kind of the dead zone, but starting to preview training camp. With that said, do you have any closing arguments before we log off?
No, man, just again, the same as always, excited for this off season. Even though we may not have the highest expectations going into the 2024 season, we have a lot to be excited about. Franchise quarterback, franchise pass rusher. So I think this season's going to be really, really fun, but there's a lot left to be, told in this off season. So looking forward to it.
Amen. The franchise kicker too. If we
Franchise kicker, I forgot about that.
Hit on
Franchise
that.
kicker.
We haven't had an organically drafted kicker that was like good, and I don't even know who the last guy was, to be honest with you.
That was good, or that we
No,
we drafted.
Well, not
yeah.
drafted, but like found. Like
Yeah.
Ryan Longwell was the last best one, but he was a Packer.
Yeah, he was a Packer guy.
And Blair Walsh was good until he wasn't, so that doesn't really count. So yeah, I don't even really have the memory bank to know when we had a kicker that we found that was good.
Daniel Carlson
wasn't good
was
for us.
bad until he was good.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you have a wonderful rest of the weekend and Memorial Day. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Peace. Go.
Later.